Welcome once again to another episode of Luke Reacts. We are here on the last day of 2024. What a wild year it has been for me. I was telling my daughter recently that it was one of the most challenging years of, in a long time. Maybe even, there was a moment when the year that I left being a missionary and moved to Washington D.C. and wanted to get my feet wet in public policy. That was one of the hardest years of my life for sure. This year was also, it was up there, probably top 5 hardest years of my life. Why? Because I it was the war in Israel was exhausting. I didn't, from October 7th, I worked for at least 50 days straight and was just exhausted and saw so much. We're losing on every front, it felt like, and not gaining anywhere. And it was really hard. And then, a bunch of stuff happened, and I ended up becoming executive director of the Philos project, which was a wild turn of events. And then really quickly after that, there was this video by Tucker Carlson on where he interviewed a pastor from Bethlehem named Munther Isaac. And I was supposed to have been in Israel that week, but because I had just become the executive director of Philos, I didn't go to Israel. I stayed at home, but I also had a cold, and I was like, I just got to react to this video because it really was just utter garbage. And I didn't realize what it would become when I did that video, because 50,000 people watched that video, and I'd meet people who watched the entire thing. I rambled on for an hour and 44 minutes of me reacting to Tucker Carlson. You can check it out. But this episode of Luke Reacts this year is basically, I'm going to go through kind of what some, like the top 5 or 6 stories of the year that involved us at the Philos Project. And I am going to start with this one with Tucker Carlson. So here's me. I have the same gray hair, because at some point you just keep having gray hair, and I'm at that point. But here's a little clip of me talking about Tucker. Many of you might have seen this video by Tucker Carlson and a guy named Munther Isaac. And let me start off by first saying that Tucker Carlson is pretty much a legend in the conservative movement. When he was on Fox, my wife and I, would watch him almost every night. Why? Because he was saying stuff that a lot of people didn't say and seemed rather fearless. So I've followed him, and then he left Fox, and now he's over on X, formerly Twitter, whatever they call that these days. And I, have not watched him that much, watched a few of the opening episodes, but, have not paid much attention. Seems to have gotten into, UFOs and who killed JFK. Neither of those things I care about all that much. So to my surprise, Tucker invited this guy, Munther, on his show. And Munther's a pastor of a church in Bethlehem. So I'm here to do basically a reaction video of Tucker and Munther kind of having a conversation. And I'm joining that conversation because Tucker and Munther are wrong. They're wrong on so many things. So it wasn't just enough to have one single take where I'm like, oh, look at what Munther got wrong, or look what Tucker got wrong. No, I need the whole thing. And so buckle up, because this is going to be the big deal. Here's what we're doing. All right. So
Right. That's good. That's good. So yeah, like I said, 50,000 people watched that video of me going off on Tucker and Monter Isaac. And Monter Isaac is basically is a gift that keeps on giving. Tucker is a little annoying to me these days, but Monter, man, his little thing, he pulled a stunt in around Christmas in 2023 where he did this, baby Jesus in the rubble. And my last reaction video was to, the expansion of that whole baby Jesus is a Palestinian, baby Jesus is a Palestinian, Jesus in the rubble, all that sort of stuff. So Munter has continued to be a rising star in the Christian anti-Zionist space. He is I even wrote an article recently where I accused him of being a Christian spokesperson for Hamas, because basically it's hard to tell the difference between what Hamas is saying and what Monter Isaac is saying. But that video with Tucker really launched the Philos Project's YouTube growth. It launched us, because when I took over at Philos, our subscribers, we had, I think, 1,700 subscribers on YouTube. And as of right now, we're at 11,900 and something, which is just awesome growth. And so thank you all very much for signing up to be a subscriber to the Philos Project channel. It's really awesome. It's a talking point I use all the time. And in two ways. One is to say how excited I am that we've grown so much, and two, to be a little bit annoyed that, man, I wish I would have started that 5 years ago. How many followers do we have now? But we didn't. So you can't go back in time and do things differently. You can only go forward. And so our YouTube growth has been pretty amazing. And I hold a lot to the fact that we did that video with Tucker. It did really well. And then we've had this show almost weekly. There are moments where I'm on the road and I don't have my studio, and I tried to do a mobile studio thing, but it was absolutely terrible. And so nobody needs to watch that stuff. And so instead, I'll just do it when I'm at home in my home studio. But we also had the Philos Project podcast with Dominique Hoffman, and man, she's killing it. She's got, her views are like twice mine, which is great. Listen, I am such a fan of the youngins, as I call them, the young ones, the 20-year-olds at the Philos Project, which is basically everybody except me and a couple others. But there was a moment this year when I was at this conference with a bunch of old people, and I was sitting in the front and I was yapping away and whatever. And then I see my young crew walk in the back, and I'm like, my heart just went pitter patter. I love those guys. They're amazing to me. And I love working with young people. They have a lot of zeal. Don't always have a lot of wisdom, but they do have a lot of zeal. And I can account for that. It's old people, working with old people is a real pain. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little, you get the wisdom, but you don't have any zeal, and that just it's frustrating. So I love the youngins. I love the old ones that work for me too. I'm not blaming them for anything. So don't get me wrong. Everybody who's watching this who's older and works for me, I love you too. But there's something special about the young ones. And Dominique has been killing it on her podcast. She does to the point where I was like, Dominique, you got to do it. You got to do it at least twice a week. This now, one's not enough. So twice a week, Dominique's doing her show, and she's getting like 3,000 likes per episode, which is just amazing. But I really appreciate Tucker in a sense, giving me the opportunity to do a reaction video to him. I did reach out to him several times via various channels to get to him, to invite him to come and fly fish with me on the Sea of Galilee, because I think that would be really fun. He's an avid fly fisherman, and so am I. And so I thought, man, maybe I can get him to come to Israel with me, and he can meet my friends and learn more about the Christians in Israel who are not aligned with Hamas, like Mother Isaac is. And he has yet to respond to my continuous pleas for coming to have me on. Maybe he'll have me on as he needs to have on a strident Christian Zionist, and I would love to be that guy. So I'm doing my best to get him to recognize me. So we'll see how it all plays out. But we're looking back. We're looking back at 2024. So 2025, who knows? Maybe I'll be on Tucker. We'll see. All right. So there's that. So then in the early days of my my executive directorship, my El Presidente status at the Philos Project, we helped organize a rally outside of Columbia University, and this was in late April. And let's run this clip because it also did really well.
No more can Christians just stand by and watch evil take place. We must rise up in this moment, in this day, because we will be judged by how we react in this day. And I will stand, and my friends will stand, and all of us will stand with Israel and the Jewish people forever, because that is what Christians do.
All right. I was very full of energy in that moment. So let me tell you how that all came about, because it was pretty spectacular. I think it was the largest at that time. Actually, might make sense actually too, but it was the largest Christian majority march in solidarity with Israel since October 7th. I got a call on the Sunday. This took place on a Thursday, so I got a call on a Sunday from. I'd gotten introduced to this guy in California by Patricia Heaton. And I ended up talking to this guy on a Sunday afternoon while I was, outside the grocery store. And he was telling me about how we need to organize something at Columbia University and we need to get Christians involved. And I was like, yeah, let me see. I could probably pull together 20, 30 people. We can, do something there. I can organize a rally. And he's like, no, man, we need like 500. And I was like, dude, I have not been able to get 500 people to do anything for me, for Israel at all. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but let me see what I could do. And so I reached out to Patricia and I said, we're going to do this thing. Let's do it. We're going to organize a rally let's do something on Thursday. Give us basically 3 days to plan. And then on Monday morning, my sister had sent me this Instagram post of this guy named Sean Foyt, who was also organizing a rally on Thursday. And he was going to organize at the same time I was going to organize. I was like, well, that's providential. And so I got a hold of Sean and I said, Sean, let's do this together. And he's like, man, I'm all about it. And so, because I figured, I could probably bring a couple hundred people and Sean could bring a couple hundred people and Patricia Heaton and her crew, they could bring a couple hundred people and we'll get 500 that way, 600 actually. And so that was the plan put in motion. And I expect I was going to be like elated if we got 500 people to show up. Instead, we had 5,000 according to NYPD. This is not Luke's numbers. This is NYPD numbers. We had 5,000 people show up at our rally because the word went out. We did this model. Most rallies and still to this day it's the same. You have a date, you have a flyer, and everybody puts their logo on the flyer and tries to get their people to show up. But you end up with this really annoying thing where people are arguing over who else is coming. Instead, what we did was said, show up. We told every organization we could show up at this location at 6:30 on Thursday night, come and rally. And everybody, we basically told everybody to act as if it was their own rally. Like they were the organizers. And what ended up happening was that anarchic kind of model, everybody just started turning up their people. And next thing you know, 5,000 people. I mean, there was a moment, guys, when I was on the corner of an intersection because we had walked around the entire campus of Columbia University, like Jericho March kind of thing. We were chanting and, yelling in bullhorns and singing and, doing all that stuff. Okay. And I was on the corner of an intersection. I was looking down one street, and as far as I could see, there was American and Israel flags and people marching. And then I looked the other way, and as far as you could see, there was American and Israel flags. We had our group was so large that there were people that had not left where we started from by the time we got back to where we started. It was a proper circle around the whole of Columbia. Man, we got so much news out of that. I mean, that video I showed you got, I think it's 286,000 views or something like that. This is my biggest views yet. So it was incredible. Then everybody was so excited about it. Let's do it in LA, guys. Let's, and so we ended up doing the following week. We did actually a week and a half later, we did it in LA. It was annoying because all the people who were marched with me in Columbia, 3 days. I figured out 3 days is what you need to plan a good rally, and you have to have an adversary, because in LA, within 3 days, half the people who had marched with me in Columbia didn't want to march with me in LA because, well, I can't march with that person. Well, that person, I was like, are you kidding me? We just did this. You just marched with them. Like, why can't you march with them again? Well, it's I don't know, man. It's just not right. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm like, so we didn't have 5,000 in LA. We only had 2,000, but it was still not bad. 2,000 is a good number. All right. So that was pretty amazing. I got to say, to this day, it was, again, one of those things that put Philos on the map this year, for sure. People are still talking about it. I was a few weeks ago when I was in Israel talking to somebody. They were, they introduced me as the guy who organized the big rally at Columbia. And everybody knew what that meant. And that was in Israel. So that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still very close with Patricia, still close with Sean Foyt and his crew. And it was a good rally. I was very, very happy that we had such a strong Christian turnout at that. All right. So our next big thing. So we had the summer. The summer is like the summer. You know what happens in the summer is that, vacation and all kinds of stuff it just kind of eats away. The summer is, I feel like we're increasingly European, because the Europeans, they'll just take the whole month of August off. We're done, people. August is a nice month in Europe. So we're all going to go on caravan trips. We're going to go to the beach or whatever. So, the summer was kind of a slow point, but one of the things we did in the summer was, and I think we did this in May, was to pull the permit for an event on the mall on October 7th in Washington, D.C. And the plan was, my plan was, I just wanted to get the permit before Hamas did, right? Because there were so many encampments and rallies and stuff like that. And I knew if I was on the other side, if I was on the pro Hamas side, that I would be like doing whatever I could to just make life miserable for Israel and the Jews, and nothing better than to take October 7th and use it to take a dig at the Israel and the Jews. And so I was like, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to pull the permit. And then what I was going to do was I was going to be like, I'll organize all the Christians, and then I'll go to the Jews and say, hey guys, what do you want to do? And so, August rolls around, and I was like, okay, this is about the amount of time that I need to organize this. And so I did that. I got all the Christians on board, and then I reached out to the Jews. The Jews took a long time to get back to me. It was a mess for a long time. There was moments in there, like I said early on, it was a hard year. There were moments in there where I was like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, like, God, listen, dude, here's the thing. I was going to do this thing. I was going to give it to the Jews. Jews going to run with it. I was going to get all the Christians there. It was going to be big and huge and whatever. And now nobody wants to do this with me because I pissed everybody off, and that was unhelpful. And I was like, nobody really knows this is happening, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I felt like God's like, no, you got to do it. You got to keep going. I was like, are you sure? And a few days would go by, and more misery would happen. More people would tell me no. I had no money for this thing, and I'm just kind of like, and Lord was like, no, you got to keep going. You got to do this. You got to follow through. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. You got it, Luke. Okay. All right. So thing was, in September, like beginning of September, I'd finally corralled like a core group of people, was given loaned an event planner from a partner org, Susan Michaels, who's with the ACLJ, and she started a thing called American Christian Leaders for Israel, ACLI, and they were partnering with me on this thing, and we got an event planner, and so we were planning the event and organizing, reaching out to speakers, getting sponsors, getting other partner orgs to get on board, and getting people signed up to come and all that sort of stuff. And the week before, sitting in our office in New York, and had been planning for a couple of days, and it was just we weren't getting the kind of speakers we want. And there was a moment where I was like, we didn't have a big Christian leader to speak. We had a bunch of Jewish leaders to speak. We didn't have a big draw on the Christian side. We were racking our brains going like, who do we get? Who do we get? What's the person? And we ended up, I was like, guys, let's just pray. Let's just give this to the Holy Spirit. Let's give it to Jesus and let him figure out who's going to speak at our event. Because it was, by that time, it was like 7:00 at night, and I was tired. And so we just prayed. We said, Lord, we need a big Christian leader to speak. And I'm driving home, and I get a call from a friend of mine, there was a guy who was helping us with logistics to put up a stage and stuff on the mall. And he had been at with Trump and his team up in Wisconsin, and had asked Trump's team to do a video of our for our rally, like a 2-minute video, guys, thanks for standing with Israel, whatever. I'm proud to stand with Israel, that kind of video. And what happened was, my guy is talking to Trump's team and said, well, could we, and asked if if they would do a video that we could show at our rally. And no, we're thinking about sending JD Vance. And I was like, so this guy calls me up and tells me, so this is not public consumption, but they're probably going to send JD Vance. And I was like, what? Literally, we just prayed like an hour before, about having some big name, speaker. And that big name speaker ended up being J.D. Vance, the incoming vice president of the United States, which makes me very happy. Personally, Philos Project is a nonpartisan organization, and we have all people all over the spectrum at the Philos Project. I myself am a Republican, and I voted for Trump and Vance, and I'm proud of it. And I'm proud that J.D. Vance came and spoke at my rally. And so, anyways, it was incredible. It went from, but I still have yet to recover financially from that event, even though Secret Service came and handled security. What ended up happening, we had 12,000 RSVPs, people, for that event. And unfortunately, what happened was, because JD was involved, like, it was basically the rally was going to be from 12 to 3. And so people would come. We expected people to show up at 12, 12:30, whatever. And instead, they ended up, because JD was there, they closed access to our event grounds before 12 o'clock, which meant that basically all the people who came were the people who showed up before 12, which was not as many as I wanted, obviously, as you might imagine, because anybody who was late, who came after 12, couldn't get in. But we were on every major news outlet in the country. And honestly, to this day, I feel like if JD didn't come, our event would have been a tree falling in the forest, and no one would have heard about it. But it's one of those things. God was like, Luke, I got you. I know you remember when I told you got to do this thing. Remember when you asked me for us? I got you, Luke. And honestly, that's if you summed up my year is like, I got you, Luke. So yeah, I could get a little weepy if I'm not careful right there. Okay, so I'm going to show you a clip from our rally because it just makes me happy.
Today in the United States, there are literal pro-Hamas protesters around the country calling for a ceasefire. And what they're really calling for is for a unilateral surrender. I have a different message. The only way this war is going to end is when Hamas gives up its arms and stops the fighting and lets the hostages come home. That is the way to end this conflict.
All right. Amen. I agree. I still make that point. It is, yeah. I have this like regular response to all the trolls of all my trolls on X is Hamas just needs to surrender at this point. They're, the latest, whatever hospitals attacked, whatever, encampments bombed this week, or it's cold and so people are dying. Hamas just needs to surrender. At some point, they just got to surrender. That's my line. And I just really appreciate the clarity from JD there, and it was really cool. I got to spend a few minutes with him, give him kind of a short briefing on what I thought, like where Christians were at on stuff, and what was the mood in the country vis-a-vis Israel and Hamas and all that sort of stuff. And it was really cool. I got to help with his speech, and it was a great, amazing opportunity. Another one of those opportunities where, again, like it really kind of expanded the reputation of the Philos Project, because to this day, it's still, AP uses the image sometimes of where it was JD at our rally, and the Philos Project has its logo right there on the podium, and it's just shows us, and it's really cool to me. And I got pictures with him, and I don't know. I'm really happy about that one. Another example of God just kind of showing up for me, and I love him for it. I mean, I loved him before, but it really, I just really do appreciate God coming through for me. All right, so then we're right around October 7th. Then it's obviously the 1 year anniversary. And I had written an article with one of my colleagues, Phil. And Phil and I wrote an article basically laying out what, a lot of the, the language around the hostages, the big kind of repeated hostage statement over and over was bring them home. And we like, even, I have there's these dog tags. I got one right behind me. These dog tags that I wore for a year, basically, which, were like a way to remember the hostages. And it says on that dog tag, bring them home. And me and Phil were talking in our office, and it was like, well, the problem with bring them home is it puts the onus on the IDF and the Bibi Netanyahu government, and it's all about Israel doing the work to bring home the hostages. Whereas it really needs to be let them go. The framing needs to be let them go, because by saying let them go, who are you demanding let them go? You're demanding that of Hamas. You're demanding that of Hamas's proxy like funders. It's leaning on the Egyptians. It's leaning on the Qataris. It's ironically leaning on the Egyptians, since they were the, in the Bible, it's let them go. And we use that. So, the degree to which, the Egyptians might have a role to play in that, it could also be important. But we just felt like let them go was a better way to frame the call for Hamas, rather than let them bring them home. And so we wrote an article, and we actually got it in the Wall Street Journal, which was really, really cool. And it was the first ever piece in the Wall Street Journal. I've been published in lots of other places many times, but the first time in the Wall Street Journal. That story did really well. You can check it out. I'm sure we'll have a link to it, but it was really cool. It was great to be in the Wall Street Journal. And I still believe that let them go is the better framing than bring them home. And, the Israeli government picked it up, and they started using it a bit, and other people started using it more. And I got JD to mention it in his speech. So that was cool. Yeah. So, all right. The last video I want to show is we have people who, are friends around the Middle East. And one of them is a woman named Mariam. And Mariam is the daughter of a Southern Lebanese army fighter, SLA. The SLA fighters were people who basically, they were Christians who fought alongside the Israelis against the Islamists in Lebanon. And when Israel pulled out of Lebanon, they ended up coming with, a bunch of them came with the Israelis and ended up moving to Israel, and they lived in various places in Israel. And Mariam is one of the daughters of an SLA fighter. And Mariam just posted this, real quick video about some big news. So let's watch what that big news was.
Today, Israel confirmed that Hassan Nasrallah, the head of the Iranian regime's terror proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, was killed in a strike yesterday by the IDF. As a Lebanese Christian, Nasrallah's elimination might mean I could return home to my village in Lebanon and see my family again. Nasrallah is a complex personality within the Lebanese society. Hezbollah, a Shiite group, and its leader Nasrallah are allegedly responsible for the elimination of key Lebanese personalities through the years to establish their own rule, such as the former Sunni Prime Minister Rafi al-Hariri, the Christian Kataeb Party politician Pierre Jmeil, the journalist Gibran Twaini, former Minister of Economy Mohammed Shatta, and the list goes on and on. In addition, the proxy is responsible for the 2020 port explosion in Beirut, which killed and injured thousands of Lebanese civilians due to the explosion of approximately 3,000 tons of Hezbollah's ammonium nitrate stored in a warehouse. Hezbollah helped the Assad regime in Syria eliminate opposition to the brutal dictatorship. Hezbollah is hated by a significant number of Lebanese and others in the region, as he played a main role in obstructing the elections of a Lebanese president and terrorizing potential candidates. The terrorist organization has also led the country into a war with Israel on the 8th of October, despite the Lebanese government's strong opposition. People in Lebanon and Syria are celebrating Nasrallah's death, and we are all very hopeful that this will open a door to an agreement between Israel and Lebanon that will lead to prosperity and peace in the region.
So I wanted to play that whole thing because it was just really great, and it summarized so much of the last several months, which is once the war in Gaza kind of winded down a bit and it was not so demanding of Israel turned its attention towards the north, because since October 7th, there was this kind of the civilians could not live within a couple miles of the border of Lebanon. So several 100,000 Israeli civilians were basically internally displaced people. They couldn't live in their homes. They couldn't, go to work. They were in central Israel. And there had been just a constant barrage of rockets day after day for a year, more than a year, thousands of rockets, and anti-tank missiles and drone strikes and all kinds of, just on and on and on. And there was a point where Israel's like, enough of this, enough. And they started this campaign to take out the leaders of Hezbollah, which is, as Mariam noted, is the main proxy, one of the main proxies of Iran, but is a Shiite terrorist organization, basically, that really had terrorized the country of Lebanon as well, and brought Lebanon into this war. And Nasrallah was like one of those key figures. He was always around, had been around for a long time, and his taking him out was such a huge move. And right around the same time, there was what many have been calling Operation Grim Reaper, which was the operation where beepers exploded in the hands of several thousand mid-level operatives of Hezbollah, and it basically started this campaign of eliminating one after another the leaders of Hezbollah, to the point where the leadership was utterly decimated. And there was an article that came out, I think yesterday even, that talked about how Israel's internal, the intelligence community had burrowed into Hezbollah's structure so deeply that they knew where every leader was at all times. And Nasrallah was confident up until the day he died that he would not be taken out, that Israel would not take him out. And even though his advisors around him were warning him that he should not stay around, he should be more careful, he was overconfident and prideful, one could say, in his thought that Israel would not touch him. And Israel touched him, killed him, actually, with a big bomb on his head. And it was end of Nasrallah. Subsequently, there was an ongoing conflict between Israel and Hezbollah for several months, and then there was a ceasefire deal recently. The hope is, though, that in the Trump administration, that there will actually be a peace deal between Israel and Lebanon, that Lebanon would join the Abraham Accords, and one day that not only would Mariam be allowed to go up to visit her family and see her village in Lebanon, but also that, you know, a guy like me could go from Israel into Lebanon, Lebanon into Israel without, you know, without any issue. Right now, you can't do that right now. Yet you can't have an Israel stamp and go into Lebanon, and so it's a real issue. And I would love to see peace between Israel and Lebanon, and I'm working very hard on that. So I don't know. I feel like those were kind of some big stories. They were big for us. They helped, you know, elevate our profile. There was hundreds of thousands of likes on Mariam's YouTube video, and it was really great. So well done to my team. Listen, I couldn't have done any of this without the Philos Project team, without George, who's been an excellent producer for me, my comms team, Susanna and Josepha, Haley, and the rest. I really appreciate you all. Janie, who came on a little bit later, just been a real great team for me. And I couldn't have done any of this work without them. And I'm so proud to call them my colleagues. And so as 2024 ends and we look ahead to 2025, it's going to be an adventurous year, no doubt. With the new administration, I expect we'll see Abraham Accord stuff come online pretty quickly. I think we'll see an end to the war in Gaza pretty quickly. And, you know, who knows what happened with Syria. Hopefully, my hope is a controlled balkanization. If you want to ask me about that, drop it in the comments. And if you have any other thoughts or comments about what you've seen over this year, I'd love to get your takes on what you thought was the coolest stuff we did. So thank you, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas and or Hanukkah. And also, if you want to like and subscribe, that would be amazing. If you want to donate to the Philos Project, we always need support in that level. And yeah, have a wonderful, wonderful new year, and see you in 2025.